I've heard nothing but glowingly bad reviews about Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. 4.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 12% rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, and an audience score of 30%, and even on Letterboxd, we're talking 1.6 out of 5. By all accounts, it seems like the world has decided that this movie belongs at the very bottom of a trash bin. Underneath, yesterday's rotten leftovers, a couple of stinky gym socks, a dirty diaper, and even an overflowing barf bag. Let's just say that I was moaning and groaning the moment I pressed play for this film, expecting an absolute misfire. But it ain't that bad, guys. It's not great, but the hate for the film has been greatly over-exaggerated. Immediately after the events of the last movie, the very first Predalien has been born, a perfect hybrid between Alien and Predator. It wreaks havoc on the Predator's spaceship, causing it to crash land in an incredibly small town in Colorado, unleashing xenomorphs into the public. A lone Predator travels to the same town to hunt down and eliminate the xenomorphs once and for all. As I said, I don't think that this movie deserves all of the hate that it has ultimately accumulated over the years. I hardly think that it's worth a ton of praise necessarily, as I mostly think the movie is an okay, fair film that I might not jump to rewatch at any point, but crap, it is not. Let's break down those things that I consider to be positives here, starting off with the Predator element of the film. While I would say that the previous film was predominantly alien-centric, this movie is the opposite, having a much stronger focus on the Predator side of things. While there were a ton of Predators in the last movie, there is one lone wolf in this film against a sea of xenomorphs. That automatically turns this film into more of a one-man army type of thing, which I think works a lot better for Predator-centric storylines. By doing this, we were able to get to know this specific Predator a lot better. It is infinitely smart, calculating, strategic, like a true apex predator tracking down its prey. This Predator ultimately pulls out all the stops, doing a bunch of Predator things that we rarely even got to see in the last movie. That movie was more about fun brute strength between two opposing forces than it was about showcasing actual skills that the Predators have. This movie actually managed to do that, turning this into a fairly decent Predator movie. I actually also really love the setting of the film, which was in this random small town in Colorado. In recent memory, this was really the very first time a movie in either the Alien or Predator franchise took place in a grounded setting with regular everyday people in a regular everyday town. Usually in both franchises, you get a very futuristic, sci-fi, dystopian world with spaceships, alien worlds, futuristic technology, robots, etc. This, on the contrary, was just a regular old town in Colorado, and I really liked the contrast and found it compelling to watch because of that. Finally, without giving too much away, I also loved their explanation of the Yutani Corporation and how it played a stake in the world of Alien. We all know at some point there was supposed to be a business merger between the Weyland Corporation and the Yutani Corporation, because eventually it would be called Weyland-Yutani, but the origin story of that merger is mostly shrouded in mystery, even still to this day. That being said, the official timeline has given hints here and there, but it is still murky waters. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, on the other hand, gave a huge hint as to what they contributed, connecting it specifically to both Alien and Predator lore, and I loved that. Now, before I get into some of the negatives that I have with the film, I did want to talk about what everybody else always complains about, and that is how dark it is. A massive complaint that I've seen is that it just seems like somebody turned out the lights the entire time and it's too dark to really ever see anything. While I'll admit that it is dark since it takes place mostly at nighttime, I'll also say that I could see everything that was happening. Think nighttime scenes in Jurassic Park. It doesn't handle it as well as Jurassic Park, obviously, but I could still see everything that was going on, though certain scenes were zoomed in too much and the editing got to be a little bit choppy during those moments. So it was a bit difficult to see those moments, but I think overall, I never really had any complaints. Then again, I did go into the thing expecting darkness to be an issue, so I watched it in pitch black with a really good 4K screen, and that might have helped with that specific complaint. I'm not entirely sure. But here are my actual negatives for the film. For the most part, this has to do with how the movie presented the xenomorphs. Like I had mentioned before, this is a predator-forward film, which is fine, but it feels as though the filmmakers didn't necessarily know what to do with the xenomorphs, especially the Predalien. At the end of the last film, we got our first look at a Predalien, a hybrid of both alien and predator. It's just that I feel like the filmmakers of the last movie probably had a very specific intent with this creature, but for whatever reason they kept that a secret, because the filmmakers here completely underutilized this thing, keeping it in the shadows for the most part until it's needed, like for a final boss or whatever. But even the regular xenomorphs throughout the entire movie feel underutilized. Or incorrectly utilized, maybe. Again, it's like the filmmakers fell in love with the Predator series and they just thought that the Alien franchise might have been mediocre or something. So that's ultimately how the aliens are perceived in this movie. They feel mediocre. Overall, I do like the movie. I think that the human characters are typical, even forgettable, but strangely better at being believable than the previous film. The last movie had some weird in-your-face ADR work that sounded fake, in my opinion, while these people had dialogue that sounded pretty darn natural. Yet everything about that last movie screams corny, but in the best possible way. Some questionable graphics, some weird ADR work, just some dumb fun action overall from the aliens and the predators. Yet somehow that corniness worked for that movie. And that's why at the end of the day, it feels much more iconic and memorable than this movie, which I think in certain aspects and concepts were dealt with a little bit better than AVP1. But I'm very well aware that I am in the minority here. I'm gonna give this 64 out of 100 possible stars. For me, that's a C letter grade. Just a reminder, I rated the first movie 72 out of 100 possible stars, or a B- letter grade. I'm not saying that this film is phenomenal. My only desire here is to say it's simply not a terrible movie on all fronts. I will still rewatch the first Alien vs. Predator film a bunch of times. Maybe not this one, ever, I don't know. Take that as you will, and let me know your thoughts on AVPR, as some would like to call it, or Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Do you agree with everybody else on the planet that says that this film sucks, or do you kind of like it a little bit, like me? Let me know, and as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come up with my next review, and until then, peace out.